The market is trading sideways, which means it goes up, then it goes down, then up again, but eventually it breaks out either to the upside or to the downside. Now, the market in many altcoins that we've been looking at and some other ones is forming a solid base, which usually leads to a blast off in the coming months. And it's a great time to have Paul from Divinity joining us to take a look at the market as well as some of your picks. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. And if you like money in crypto and you're looking for a real investor take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family. You can do that as easily as liking and subscribing. I'm not a financial advisor. Paul's not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. I could say Paul's an investor in many, many different markets. And today we're sharing with you what our thoughts are. Do note that I do own or plan to own most of what I talk about on this channel that I bring up, because I don't bring up or bring on guests of projects that I don't believe in. And special shout out to our Patreon members. We do have a private Discord that our Patreon members get access to. Now, make it rain on that like button. Strap in for the show. Let's bring on Paul from Divinity. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Looking forward to seeing what our viewers have decided that we should look at.
Yeah, our Rainmaker family loves these days that you join us, and I love them too.
Well, I really enjoy it as well. It'd be nice if it was a bit cooler, because it's sort of sweltering in London. We're not used to it, this sort of weather. We complain when it's cold and we complain when it's hot. So that's why we always talk about the weather in London.
Well, it's always raining there, and it's very humid. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to be fair, it doesn't always rain, but it's we've got a lot of grey days, whereas I think the weather elsewhere is far more predictable, which is you just don't know what you're going to get weather-wise. That's why people talk about it all the time. But I still like it.
Yeah, a lot of history there.
Yeah.
So what do you see going on in the markets in some of the majors? We have a lot of picks from the audience members from last week.
Yeah, sure. I mean, should we look at the macro first? Because I think it's quite interesting to see what's going on. For those of you who are looking at the numbers and have been following the data, there's been some very what we call high prints in inflation numbers, CPI, etc. Now that's to be expected because these are backward-looking numbers, and we had a very strong non-farm payrolls number, which again I talked about last week. So where that has left us is the dollar has edged up a bit more, but it hasn't made significant gains. We were looking for 108 as a target, and it's hit that 108. And I think we're nearing the end of this move. And I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just getting a bit more confident that we're potentially near a major turning point. Now, I could be wrong, okay? And of course, no one's got the monopoly on being right or wrong, but I've been a bull for quite some time now, and the data is looking such that I think there's going to be people capitulating and, throwing in the towel, and those who are short the dollar are now just going to buy it and reverse their positions. And that's usually a sign that we're near the end. Another thing that we always talk about is the 10-year yields. Remember, we look at how the long-term interest rate path is going. And a strong dollar, we keep saying it, it's not good for the American companies, high energy prices, which are now falling, and a high, hiking cycle, a hawkish cycle, is not conducive to an improving economy. So the numbers are going to start to look a bit negative. And if you think of the old sort of description about how the economy works, one of them is like a brick being pulled along by an elastic band, and you pull it and pull it and pull it and nothing happens, and then snap, everything happens at once. So when it turns in terms of reversing, that's potentially what could happen here. Now, what I'm seeing technically is that we've got this head and shoulders pattern, which is a really big one, forming in 10-year yields. So that means that yields are going to go down. And if they do go down, that means that we're going to be on a risk-on environment. In other words, people are going to start using the fact that they can borrow money at lower rates to move back into what would be considered more riskier markets. And that includes things like commodity prices, like, copper's collapsed, and raw sort of base metals have absolutely tanked. And given that we're in an inflationary environment, that's quite strange if you think about it. They should be going up. Now, I think China is going to be eyeing all these lower commodity prices as an opportunity, and I don't know how long they're going to stick around for. So, in my view, we could be near the end, or at least we're at the beginning of the end of this move in the dollar, and perhaps there'll be a few people breaking away and looking to place some strategic buys just to see how we get on. Now they're going to start small because that's a really good way to start, and then build up if things go right. So as far as I'm concerned, if we can get below 2.8% in the 10-year, and look, this might 100% turn into a reversal pattern, but it's looking pretty good so far. If it comes down, breaks 2.8%, then we could have a move all the way back to 2%, possibly even lower. So this is a really interesting cycle. What you'd expect to see is the data looking continually sort of high inflation, following along from that, the lagging numbers. But the market's forward looking, it's looking ahead and saying, well, actually, things are going to turn back down fairly quickly. So we're at a very interesting potential tipping point. This is actually not the time to go on holiday. It's not the time to go away from the markets. And it's just the time when everybody will start going on holiday, because we're approaching sort of the August time when everyone goes away. So there could be some great opportunities coming up. So stay tuned, basically.
Yeah, I'm excited because as the market reverses, so we're seeing the tops possibly of interest rates going up, and the Fed could throw a wrench in that if they do keep raising rates. But there's going to be a lot of pressure from the politicians on them not to, because it will tank the U.S. economy, which will spill over into other places. But that's
Yeah.
interesting. The dollar charts, and it hit right up at your target so far at 108. And at some point that reverses. And as it does, then a lot of that money flows into other assets, which include crypto.
Yeah. I mean, the market at this stage doesn't mind if the Fed make a move in, their next move, if it's up, because they know as long as they price in pretty much what they think the Fed are going to do, as long as they don't do anything outside of that, they're okay. So they've priced in pretty much that they're going to be raising rates. What they're not thinking is that they might actually be holding or lowering rates. And so I think that pendulum is going to start to switch as we go into the summer. Now that could be that we get another down leg in the S&P. I would like to have seen the low. If I'd stick my neck out and say a nibble trade, I would say we've possibly seen the low here, and it's sort of risk reward worth a bounce. But the technicals aren't really that clear, so I'm willing to be persuaded either way at the moment. But I'm getting sort of edgy, and in the sense that I want to get in the market. And so that's looking interesting. And I think the profile of interest rates is much more important than whether they sort of start hiking because of the recent numbers. Because the market will say, oh yeah, okay, we know you're going to raise rates, but we know you're looking at commodity prices and inflation prices that have been driven by these big moves that we've already seen, and they've already reversed. So lots of commodities have dropped very aggressively, including energy. So energy's gone down a lot. Natural gas has gone down. Oil's come back to $95, which is a very big support level. I think that's pretty key at that point. I'm bullish. I think it will go up. It might actually retrace quite a bit more before it then goes up. But that's important, that it's actually subdued. And of course, demand has been destroyed by such high rates. People haven't got the spending money, so it will affect the overall economy, and so they will have to react to that.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend in the US, and he was saying that he didn't have any more money to put into crypto because he's spending like an extra $700, $600 a month on his bills just with food costs and other costs that have gone up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's really, I think people have been shocked. I mean, businesses have had to close because they just can't. I mean, there's anecdotal stories of, there was a pub that had to close because its bills for electricity weren't they'd have had to sell thousands of pints of beer to pay for their electricity, and they just said, that's it, we can't do it, even though it was a really busy pub, which is amazing, especially in this sort of environment where everybody at the moment is going out and sort of making up for lost time from the lockdown. So yeah, it's really not good. But the markets are reacting. They are reacting to this to these prices. People have adjusted their spending, and that is where we get the phrase demand destruction. People adjust their spending habits, and they tighten their belts where they can, and that's where it's so important that interest rates don't keep rising. Now, I'm not saying the problem is the Fed are in a position where they've been printing so much money. This is where inflation comes from. So you've got an intractable problem, and it's caused by all this money printing, which gets us back to why crypto exists in the first place, and these other assets exist in the first place. So if we're going to get, I think if we're going to get into a position of hyperinflation, then you're going to see gold and crypto go up a lot, and they represent a good hedge. Now, some people argue against that, but let's see. I mean, we've seen a little bit of inflation. We certainly haven't seen hyperinflation, which is still a possibility. So, I think we're going to see a very interesting few months.
Many more countries around the world are going through hyperinflation, and it can be a domino effect, right? So Sri Lanka shot themselves in the foot. I was reading about some of the problems in Sri Lanka, and one of the things that they did is they made this mandate that all their farmers would go ESG compliant, and they wouldn't use chemical fertilizers. They would use biological fertilizers. Well, their farmers, 90% of them didn't know how to do that. The cost to do it were so high, they just didn't plant anything. So 90% of the farms all of a sudden didn't produce, which meant food prices went through the absolute roof. And Sri Lanka is not the only country that did that. So that's what I call a politician created problem.
Definitely. But it's so strange that it's happening everywhere at the same time. You'd expect perhaps in one region, I'm even shocked that it's happening in the US, because obviously the problems that are going on in Europe are much closer to us than they are to you. So why they would affect you guys as well is I mean, your energy, you're not dependent on anybody. You make enough oil for yourself. So why your prices are going up is a bit of a mystery, really, unless you look at it in terms of
the U.S.
printing dollars.
Curtailed their energy development and exploration tremendously under Joe Biden. Canada is very energy efficient. Like Canada has tons of oil, and the U.S. has tons of oil. They don't need to be buying from anyone else, yet they are, and so tremendously. So under Biden, like the first thing he did was reverse everything Trump did, even the good things that Trump did. And so the U.S. was energy independent 2 years ago. It's now not. And so they're having to buy oil from foreign markets, which is part of what's driving up the price, because other countries are making some interesting mistakes. Like some of the countries in Europe are going away from nuclear energy, which I feel like nuclear energy is the best energy out there. And it's not got the risks associated with the 1960s and 1970s power plants, and it's very green. In fact, so I have a cousin that's actually a nuclear engineer or nuclear scientist that's worked on this, that teaches at university level this stuff, and has worked in that field, and has plans that he has the modeling and plans to build a nuclear reactor that could power a small city that uses so little nuclear material that the radioactive part can dissipate within 6 months. So the technology is so advanced compared to what it was like 50 years ago.
Right.
And it's so environmentally friendly, yet for whatever reason, the environmentalists have like an adverse reaction to it. There's like, they're allergic to the word nuclear, even though it's the best. In France, to their credit, they went like 80% nuclear. They're so independent energy wise because of that. But Germany, like, is in trouble because Nord Stream 1 just got shut down from Russia for maintenance. It's probably a manipulative power move by Russia, putting some pressure on Germany, because when you have to get your energy from other places, it puts you in a very bad spot. So the U.S. kind of shot themselves in the foot that way. Canada's still really strong there. But a lot of places in Europe are dependent on Russia, and which is at odds with what, I mean, Russia's doing some bad things in Ukraine. We would love for the world to be able to put more pressure on Russia, not less. But yeah, energy prices are an interesting thing, and it's created so much of this inflation. And, yeah, thanks for spending the time on the macro level. I wanted to jump into Bitcoin, which actually broke right up to the number that you had said in last week's video, and then came back down.
Yeah,
but it went up
absolutely.
exactly to where you said it would.
Yeah, it's so what we had was I've kept this on. By the way, as an aside, I totally agree with you about nuclear energy, but we could have a whole hour just on that. So let's get back to the crypto, which I'm sure is why people are watching. So yeah, so last week we were looking at this as a potential base, and sometimes the fact that this is a failure, like it went up, hit it, and came back down again, might still be a good thing because, and I say that from a point of view that the bigger this base, the bigger the rally that follows. So if this is forming an even bigger base, the question I ask myself when I look at this is what is going on? What has been going on? Well, we had that panic low on the Saturday, the 18th, and the market has gone sideways. Well, what's the definition of a base? A base is when the market goes sideways and sentiment is really bearish. Well, sentiment is really bearish and the dollar's really strong, and people are sort of bailing out of crypto and saying it's dead and all that sort of stuff. I can't guarantee that this is a low because that's not how markets work. We don't know for 100%. There's a probability. But the longer it goes sideways, the better the chance that we're hitting or forming some form of longer term base. So that symmetrical triangle that would normally move down quickly, we got rejected pretty fast. So it wasn't going to be that. It's not a small base. So that would have been really nice if it just squeezed up again. That would have been the first very clear buy signal that we would have got for a very long time. So it's come back down into this, what I call relatively neutral area. And we have to wait until it either breaks up and then confirms a bigger base, or it continues this downward trend and moves lower. Now, I'm watching these interest rates very closely because I'd like to see if yields go down, whether this starts to creep back up again. And then we know we've got a really tight correlation. I've got a big reversal pattern potential in the yields, which means that I'll get more bullish on this. And sometimes you've got to have a few bites at the cherry in a reversal. But then when we get a trend, that trend will be nice and smooth. So at the moment, it's still not clear. So the headline is we're still in a neutral zone. But I don't mind the fact that it's going sideways, given that everybody's bearish, because that can be a really good sign. And if I could just have a quick look at the Ethereum chart, the breakout level, I don't think we talked about it last week, or if we did, I can't remember that we did. But the breakout level is at 1280. And you see how it touched that bang on. Now, what that has done for us is it said 1280 is a massive level now. It's just absolutely huge. If we can break through that, then we should go to the next resistance point, which should be minimum around sort of 1600, around there. It should try and at least go for this line or the moving average that some of the algo traders look at. So this is interesting. It doesn't look like a continuation pattern anymore, and that's a really good thing. So the structure for a potential continuation pattern has gone, and now it's looking more like a base. It's looking a bit more like a base than Bitcoin is. That's looking flatter and more compressed. We still have to be cautious. We still have to wait and see. We're not jumping in with both feet, but the patience, I think, will pay off. Now, if we do get one more downward leg, so be it. I think it still will be the final move before the upward trend. But we also said last week that some of the altcoins were performing strangely better than the main markets, and that could still be a feature. So, we some of the picks might be doing better, and that's a sign that risk on is coming back in my view.
Yeah, that's exciting. A lot of people who are newer in the crypto space, the real like exciting, thrilling time to be here is when massive amounts of money are moving into the market and it brings up everything. Think of like the tide coming in and that it rises all boats. And that's a lot of what happens. Like some projects do better than others, but almost everything goes up. And that's an exciting time. We haven't had that for quite a while.
Yeah, I think the only way you're going to get like a 20%, 30%, 50% move is in the altcoins, and there's so many of them. And as we know, it's like the dot-com boom that we saw in 2000. There will be some great projects, and there'll be some ones that won't survive. And it's like the volatility is what will attract some people. You have to tread carefully, but again, there's some great opportunities as well. So, sticking with the majors, there's more chance they'll be around, but that there's less volatility there, or there's less opportunity for 5x, 10x. I mean, you've said it very well on your show before, but it's not for the faint-hearted, and it's not for leverage trading. Absolutely not.
No, leverage trading or leverage trading can be exciting. Like, oh yeah, but if it goes 20x and I have it at a 10-to-1 leverage trade, then I get 200x. And it's like, yeah, but if it just goes down a little bit, your whole position is just wiped out and liquidated. So it's like altcoins are risky enough, even Bitcoin's risky enough that leverage trading often ruins a lot of people. And it turns investing into the realm of gambling, because when you leverage trade, you're actually borrowing some funds. So you actually have to pay interest daily on that. And it takes away from the upside potential. And the reason why I like investing over gambling in an area where things are going up is that the odds are with you. If you're in a technology area that's growing, when you're gambling, the odds are against you. And I don't like betting when the odds are against me. So not when I'm talking about trying to make my money, make more money. I don't use it in places where the odds are against me. With that said, let's jump into one of my favorite ones. And what I like about this is what I feel the risk to reward ratio is, and that's a Comi. The ticker symbol is OMI. I'm going to have some guests on later this week that are all Comi maximalists, and they have YouTube channels where they cover Comi and Vivi and what's going on there. But I'm a really big fan of this. I'm especially a really big fan of it on where the pricing's been for the last while. So this gives you a lot of history, I think, because they went over from Go chain over to Immutable X's chain or Ethereum. And so that's why it cuts off the history. There is a ton more history on this, but this chart isn't showing it.
Yeah, I think so. The other chart wasn't completely up to date, but what's important about this chart is that it's showing that a base is being formed. Now, I remember when we were talking about it on the show through this downward move, and this is one of those continuation triangles. So if you're wondering why I was sort of calling the downside move last week in Bitcoin or brace for it, it was because this is exactly the sort of pattern that we were seeing potentially, and we needed to resolve either bullish or bearish. Now, if it happens quickly, and we sort of show was like the equivalent of being here. And obviously, I didn't know what was going to happen next. We needed to get the signal, and that signal was up, and it's come back down again. But that's just to explain a bit about what I was looking at and why I was looking at it. Now, I know you've been bullish on this, and we talked about it while it was down here, and I was like saying no, I wouldn't buy it. But this is because technically it's not showing me very much of a trend. But now it actually has formed a reversal. This is a decent reversal of a trend. And what's gone on here is, so I mentioned earlier that when a market reverses, the bigger the reversal phase, the bigger the potential move that follows. Now, what we shouldn't do is kind of paint patterns into what's not there. What I mean by that is we can invent price action. I see people doing it, and you shouldn't do it. But what I think is really interesting about this is the symmetry. So I look for symmetry. So the market has gone down. It's had a consolidation. It's gone down further. Now it's gone up. It's consolidating in the same zone where it went down. So I would be happy to see it go sideways for a bit. And then if it takes out what would be, what's that, 0016, if it takes that out, then to me, that's formed enough of a base to suggest that this is going to go up. So it's encouraging. It's a good sign. Certainly not, very negative, which is how people would believe the market is right now. So yeah, I think this is interesting. I would venture to say I would buy it with a stop below this 12 level. So I don't want to see it come below 13. So 0013. If it breaks below here, then I would I would feel it's getting too close to the all-time low, and therefore I wouldn't want to be in it. But as long as it can consolidate here, I'd be happy to have a longer term position. I'd sort of put it in the bottom drawer and then have a look at it in a little while.
My friend works with a number of millionaires that are big on Ecomi, and they have huge buy orders in below the 0.001 mark, where you can see when it came down before, it hit right
Wow.
to about that level, almost to 0.001, but not below it,
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
bounced up. Yeah. And then, yeah, it hasn't even come back down there, because I wonder if some of these millionaires are getting impatient, wondering if it's not going to hit down there. And, they're
Well,
deciding maybe this is as low as it'll go again.
yeah, I mean, as I say, this is a perfect example of one where I would not be buying down here because technically there's no justification. I have to wait for me, there's no justification.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that
You
people
wait
who
till you know that the trend is reversed and showing signs that it's then going up.
yeah, so exactly. So what we want to see is we want to see a base. So if this is going to be a great investment, it's not going to just trade here and go down. It's going to go all the way up here. It's going to keep going. May even go to $1. So how's it going to get there? Well, it's got to start a new trend, and that's the new trend that we're looking for. We're looking for big swings, and so what we do is wait for the market to form a base before getting in. It doesn't guarantee that there's a base, but it's safer than buying something that's dropping really heavily. And there's plenty of examples of things that have dropped very heavily and kept dropping. And this is where you can fall into the trap of buying more into a market that's going to go to zero. You've got to just be careful about doing that. You got to have a proper strategy. And it's okay if it's something you've researched and you feel there's good risk reward. But from a technical point of view, um, if this is going to be a good trend, it's got to start somewhere. And so this looks like it's starting. So there's reason to be optimistic.
One of the things I really like about this one is there's so few companies in crypto that are profitable yet. Kind of like the early .com phases, right? Everything was based on hopes, and almost none of them were turning profits yet. Ecomi is one of the few crypto projects that's profitable and very profitable. And so that's a sign of good health. I remember Binance, when the last crypto market or bear market hit really strongly, Binance's token did exceptionally well during the bear market when everything went down. In fact, all the altcoins went down 95% or more. BNB, or Binance's token, during that time went up 3x. So not only was it a safe haven, it was a safe haven that did returns. Now, that wasn't the only factor that Binance was profitable and making money. They continued to give their BNB token use cases, and that's a big part of what created the sustainability, the how it could go up when everything was going down. And so I feel like their weight position, they had a huge run up. It was about 10 times cheaper than this price we're at now. In fact, 10 and 20 and 30 times cheaper during the bear market. And they had a huge run up to 1.4 cents. And so it's just correcting from that run up last March still. And so some people had it from extremely, extremely low levels, and they could sell even at these levels and be highly in profit. And so even though the company's profitable and stuff, there's a lot of people that have the tokens from much cheaper prices, as well as those that are willing to panic sell out because they're scared it goes to zero. And that's why selling action is still happening even at these low prices. Because as much as we see those as low prices, some people bought these for 30 times cheaper. over a year ago, a year and a half ago.
Right. So it'd be great if this is an inverse head and shoulders pattern, which would mean that it would go sideways for a bit and then go up. So yeah, very good. Nice. Good to see it.
Cool. Let's take a look over at Solend.
Okay. So Solend, let's just make sure it is this one. Yeah. Okay. So this is well, interesting, as you say, green candle or green bar that's come out today, but you know the trend is still down, unfortunately. Now, am I about to miss a really big move? Probably, but I can't move on this move yet. In other words, I can't jump in on this move yet because I need to see more evidence of a base. And that could be that it needs to get as far as 73 cents and then come down again and form maybe a bigger base or break through it. I'd feel better about buying it paradoxically higher than right here. But there are some interesting signs that things are going on. I mean, if you look at the volume is suddenly jumped. So that's got to be potentially buy volume. So it's gone from a low level in the downward trend. So this is a good sign. As the trend was going down, volume was tailing off, and then we've got a big jump in volume, and the market's gone up. But that is still a big mountain to climb, and I think I want to see a bit more evidence that the base is in before I would step in. But it's a good sign. It's a good starting point. It's moving against the market, and everything else is either consolidating. This is trying to move up. Um, these last 2 days have been a big influence on the overall chart. So if we taken those out, it would have been just a very simple. No, sorry, that's still going down. I'm not going to touch it. But the fact that that has taken out, if we look at how many days of bearish price action this rally has negated, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 days worth of bearish price action. So one day can be quite important. But as I say, it's still early days for this to be a bigger reversal. So I'm going to just wait for now. But I'm intrigued by that. I'd keep an eye on it.
Yeah, DeFi seems to have some momentum coming back in, and this falls in DeFi on Solana's ecosystem, which Solana has just been punished since about September of last year. And almost everything in the Solana ecosystem has been punished as Solana's chain itself has had to be restarted a couple times and just some unexpected problems. But some of these unexpected problems get solved. And what I really like about projects like Solend is really strong backers. And so they don't just wither away and go away easily, even when times are tough. So, yeah, this is an interesting one to watch and one to, I think, people to put on their radar, especially at these prices. I had no idea it was going to get this cheap. I bought on a pullback much, much earlier. And my position on this is down. So I'm looking for a better sign of the reversal before I'm going to jump and put even more in this. Not that I don't like it. I really like it. I'm putting more in OMI myself right now, as well as more in one that we're going to talk about next, actually, Bumper.
Yeah.
But Solend, I'm going to put on my watch closely
Yeah.
because I want to pick more of this one up.
Sure. Yeah. So Bumper. So we had a quick look at Bumper. Now this is the chart. This is updated. So the Coinbase, Coin Market Cap, Coin Trader Pro charts weren't updating before, but seem to be updating now, which is strange. So I'm not sure why there's a delay, but apparently you guys put this in late last week, and what a call! What did you see? You're gonna have to let us know because that was pretty amazing. It was before the market moved. Now, technically, this formed a double bottom here at this price at basically around 3 cents. So we had moved down one, and then another move down 2, and then a break of the resistance. That's a classic double bottom pattern. And what you want to see is a break, and for the market just to stay stuck and not to come back, just to keep going. But that's that's an incredible move. That's much more than you would have expected from a small pattern. So there's definitely something really interesting going on here. And it would be unusual for it to do this and reverse it completely. So I think there could be it could be a buy on a pullback. Now it's a bit sort of difficult to jump in on something like this when it's moved so aggressively. Maybe wait for a little bit of a consolidation.
It
But
is
when
back down, even though the chart's not showing it. It's all the way back down at 5 cents right now.
right, okay, so it's come back. It's come back here, but that's okay because compared to the breakout, it's still good. It's still very good, and I don't know why it's jumped so much. They've obviously made some announcement,
Hmm.
but you'd expect to pull back like that because, of course, there's going to be people who've bought in and they're just going to jump in and take profits. The question is this a long-term investment? So the people who are thinking long-term, is this the beginning of something much larger? And once the sort of initial profit taking has happened, the longer term investors will come in, or the people like me who hadn't seen it will think, okay, that's worth having a go. Now, this big gap area, there's an expression that says all gaps are filled. Not necessarily. Some gaps aren't filled, and they're called breakaway gaps. A breakaway gap is the beginning of a major trend. So as long as it doesn't trade into this area here, I would say it should be considered bullish. So as long as it doesn't break into or significantly trade into this area. So we could put, I suppose, a stop at just below sort of 3 cents and say that's kind of parachute out. But this normally would be associated with the start of a bigger move. It's broken a downward trend. And so, yeah, very, very interesting. I'd like to know a bit more about what they do.
So Bumper Protocol is pretty amazing. We've talked about it, but it was months and months and months ago, and we talked about a lot of altcoins. We've had them on the channel a couple of times. So say you're a big investment firm and you want to hedge your position. Well, right now, what they have is the ability to put in stop losses, right? So that if it starts reversing from where they went, it can sell a certain stop point, right?
This is ringing a bell. Yeah, I
So
remember that.
bumper allows you to bumper your investment. So let's say you're taking a ride up, but you don't want to take the ride down. So you can essentially, it's kind of like taking out insurance, but it's not an insurance product. It's like a hybrid of insurance and a stop loss. So let's say you want to protect your ETH position. Right now, you're picking up ETH at $1,000 a piece, and you're a hedge fund, so you buy $100 million worth of ETH, and the market starts going up, and you want to explore further upside without selling, or even at the current price, you just want to kind of insure it. What you can do is you can insure it at either the 85% level, the 90 or 95% level. So you paid $1,000 ETH piece, you can buy insurance. And what happens with it? Say you protected at the 85% level. If it goes below 850, you can cash in that insurance at any time, or you can then liquidate your position and get 850 per ETH out. Now, what I really like about this tool is when the bull market is going good, it allows you to explore way further upside without having to sell your position. Now, you could just put in a stop loss, right? Which is what everyone's done. The problem with a stop loss is sometimes you get wicked down to, like, say, ETH wicks down to 840. Stop loss is hit. It sells your position at a loss because you bought it $1,000. And then it goes up to $7,000. And this happens all the time in crypto. But what Bumper does is it protects it. So if it goes down below that, you don't have to cash it in at that price. You can leave your position open and still be able to claim it at the 850 level. So it wicks down to 840. You don't get stopped out. And then when it goes crazy, it goes up and you're like, okay, wow, it's way, way up. You know what? Let me just move my position, my insured position up to now it's at say $10,000 and you want to move it up to 8,500 because you want to continue to explore further upside. But if it reverses, you're fine with the 8,500 per ETH, right? So that's what Bumper Protocol does. So it's kind of like a hybrid between insurance and stop losses. And yeah, you'll have to check out the interview. I interviewed Jonathan Descartes twice, and he's brilliant and explains exactly what they're doing and why smart contracts allow this to happen in ways that technology couldn't do before.
Great.
Cool.
Sounds a bit like option trading potentially, but
It's
it'd be
kind of like options with some things that options couldn't do before. And so it's a new technology. Options are a 50-year-old technology. And this is the next layer of innovation on it. So if this hits big, and I think it will, this will spread to other markets, but it's only possible because of smart contracts. The way that they do it is brilliant.
right.
And the way they do it, they had some very, very smart people working on how to put this all together. People with huge options trading backgrounds, combined with some crypto people that understood smart contracts to make this possible. And so their alpha is going live. In fact, right after your and I's call today, I'm speaking with the Bumper team just to get an update with them on what's going on over there.
Brilliant.
So
Brilliant. Look forward to that.
cool. Let's check out Drive.
Yeah.
And Drive, we talked about lots of times. Essentially, this is a competitor to Uber that is using decentralization and a token.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, this is potentially forming a base. So we've got the downward trend, which is pretty obvious, and it has been causing us to be, very cautious along the way. There haven't been signs of a reversal until around here. So we've got one base and another low that came down and broke what would have been a double bottom here. Now, it's a bit of a shame that it's turned around again so quickly. I mean, there must be just overhang of supply and people just using any opportunity to get out. But as I mentioned before, when a market is going to go on a long-term journey, the basing periods extend. And so as long as it's a good long-term project, they'll be happy to buy in at these levels. This is psychology of a reversal pattern. So I'd have to wait here because it is so close to its prior low that it's very easy for it to just sort of wick down and start a new downward trend. So I have to be cautious. But if it can get back up towards this price action here, where obviously there's something important going on, then it would have looked really good technically because it will have formed an even larger base. So as I say, sometimes these failures can turn into something even bigger, but there is a time element. It probably, if it's going to base, it could be another couple of weeks before we see it complete, and then it would start the upward trend. So I'd have to wait, but it's looking more interesting because there's clearly some people biting at these lower levels, and that's what you want to see in order to get this trend reversed. So a couple more steps for a major base, and it would look even better.
Yeah, good. I'm excited about this one. We'll see. It's a risky play. If you think about it, Uber, compared to Uber, doesn't necessarily need decentralization. However, they have a different model for their business that allows the drivers that want to drive for them, they just drive a monthly fee, and then they keep 100% of all their rides. Plus, for those that want to open a local franchise to manage all the drivers that want to do it locally, they have to buy Drive token and stake a certain amount of it in order to open a local franchise. So as more and more local franchises want and need to open up, they have to buy more and more of this token. And so it's a really interesting model. It's different. It's, I would say, high risk, high potential return if it does well. We've had the CEO on the channel twice now, and she's brilliant. And yeah, I think she's really smart, driven businesswoman. So, and I think there's a need for it because this allowing drivers to keep more of their own money and riders to pay cheaper fares. So I think when you introduce something where the costs are lower to the end consumer and the person who's delivering that service makes more money, I think it's a recipe for success.
Sounds like a win-win. And if it makes the investors money, that's a win-win-win. So yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. All right, let's
brilliant.
jump over to one we haven't talked about in a little while, and this is Dows. Now, shadows. And this is essentially derivatives on the Polkadot chain. Now, Polkadot's ecosystem has not been doing very well since mid last year, actually. And so, a lot of times in crypto, we think when something's not doing well, oh, we run away from it. But crypto goes through cycles. And so, things go through like a pendulum swinging. So sometimes it swings too far to the left and sometimes it swings too far to the right. Just think about the pendulum swinging. And so really you have to evaluate whether you think, and also Nomics tends to show this one well, but CoinGecko does as well and show a much better history.
Yeah.
So
So
the
that,
pendulum swings too far each way. If you think about it, Solana has been out of the hype cycle and narrative for a long time. Polkadot has definitely been out of the hype cycle and narrative. But, it was over a year ago, that people were saying Polkadot was going to crush Cardano and beat it long term. And they really got hit hard because a lot of their development was in China when China decided no more blockchain, no more crypto. And so
yeah.
that hurt a lot of their development. And so everything on Polkadot's ecosystem has been massively down. But we talked about one earlier, Ecomi, and that even at these lows, it was 30x cheaper just a year and a half ago. That often happens. Things go out of the hype cycle, they get really cheap, and then money comes back into them. And when all of a sudden money starts coming back into crypto, the pendulum usually swings too far the other way, and so much money comes into crypto that things that are down, at least if they're surviving, they then pump tremendously.
Yeah. So I'm just going to jump into a much shorter chart because we're getting, okay, that's better. So we've got the more recent data. The max chart just shows obviously this big move up and then this retracement. Um, very good for data. I think, but I would give 3 out of 10 for this particular charting package because look, you want these numbers on this side because that's where you're looking. So this has been created by a developer and not by somebody who's using it. And also, I'd like to be able to turn this thing off because every time I'm trying to talk about the chart,
I know, right?
it gets in the way. But I know it's trying to be helpful to give you levels, but it's yeah, but maybe there's a way. I just have to. I'm not used to using it, so sorry about that. But the trend has been down, but again, we're getting this like pickup in buying that we're seeing across some of the altcoins. I was saying at the top of the show that perhaps this is leading or going to lead some moves elsewhere. It does look like risk is coming back in. Now it's still very early days, and we've still got to be cautious, but there's signs that this is trying to turn around. So a couple of days worth of positive price action isn't enough to change such a dramatic downward trend, but it's the start of something. When it's synchronizing with everything else, I think you've got to take note. So again, I can't call a low here yet, but it's looking good. It's looking better, much better than it did before. Because before it was just a straight no, that's going down. I wouldn't touch it. And now it's like, well, it's trying to base. So that's phase one. We need to see phase two, another impulsive move, or perhaps a slightly elongated basing phase before it begins potentially a new trend. But yeah, still worth keeping an eye on. That's for sure.
Yeah, cool. Let's take a look over at Spores, which with the rest of the market is down. Everything's down.
Yeah. So Spores.
Spores
Spores.
Network.
Yeah. So I'm going to pick one in the middle just to see if that's no, that's not up to date.
Not that one. I think that's Spores token, which will be something else.
I'll try the top one, but yeah. Oh, okay, that is up to date, right? Oh no, that's not.
No, it's not.
That's not right. See, that's the trouble. Some of them have come off there, which is a shame because the charts are better. But we can find it on CoinGecko, so let's do that. But it will be the same sort of chart, so you have to bear with us with that. So without a log chart, it's so okay. Here we go. Look again, very smooth downward trend. So we want to see this going up, not going down, right? Of course, but that's what we're looking for. We're looking for smooth trends or a change in trend. So once you've got a downward trend, the question is, what's coming next? Is it going to reverse? What's the first step for it to reverse? It goes sideways. So it's starting to go sideways. That's potentially the first sign that it's going to go up. So it's not enough just that it goes sideways, because sometimes it does that and then moves down. We want to see an impulsive move to kick the start the ball rolling or kick off the next major trend. So for the moment, I'd have to obviously sit on the sidelines because there's not enough again for this to be bullish enough to jump in. I'm not trying to catch the absolute low. I just want to ride a bigger trend on the way up. But I'm intrigued by the fact that it's going sideways. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars where the pace of the decline has eased, and it's showing some signs of people buying it, or at least not selling it. And it's again, as I say, that's the first sign that the market is turning. So we need a bit more evidence, and perhaps we'll get it very soon. So worth keeping an eye on.
Perfect. Let's take a look over at Chainlink. Chainlink has been out of narrative for quite a while, and I remember this just running and running and running. Actually, during much of the crypto winter, Chainlink went up, and it topped out at, what is that, about
$9.50, yeah.
or something, yeah. And so it's corrected down almost 90%. And yeah, so like I remember when it was like $40 and $50, people were like, "Oh yeah, Chainlink, it's the best thing in the world." And it's like everything needs a correction, and markets don't go up only, and so it needed a good correction. Now it's starting to get interesting now that it's almost 90% off.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure we've talked about it before, and I would hope that I would have mentioned this support around, $5, because you can see that is massive resistance, and also the breakout point to the trend. So if it can come back to touch that level, that should be a good base, a good support point from which risk reward, it'd be worth, having a go. So that's on the basis of a short-term sort of move with a stop below, because I wouldn't want to see it go much below that. So risk is that it hits it and then reverses, even if it's a couple of dollars for a short-term trade. If it goes wrong, then it's, say 50 cents on the downside. It's not bad risk reward, really. But this is a very interesting zone where I think looking for support is valid. Now, just to preface that, things can move very quickly. So if that support doesn't hold, then it can equally cause another very sharp move down. So you've got to keep sort of two steps in the game plan. Okay, if this works, great. Looks like it's turning. If not, we've got to move to another strategy of bailing out, and then waiting to see where the next support level comes in, which is much lower. That'd be at $1.50. So we don't want this to be violated. We want this to start turning around with the rest of the market here. And let's see if it can do it. Now, if it breaks $9 back to that 9.5, of course, that would be, you might say, well, why don't I just buy it here? Well, you can't just buy it until you've got confirmation, and you get confirmation on it hitting a good support level or it making a reversal level. So a reversal point would be at 9.5 because it failed there before. If it gets through it the next time, that shows that there's a change in sentiment towards it and the upside could be extended. So it would also be going for a downward trend line, breaking the downward trend line potentially too, if it did that, and it would be forming a bigger base. So as it stands now, we just have to wait and see. But it's in this interesting zone where you'd be sort of braced to be buying it, given its previous price action.
Yeah, for me, this is still a wait as well. In fact, most of what we looked at today, for me, is a wait. I did buy a little bit of bumper just because I have some. I just wanted more. And so I have more on the sidelines to buy bumper should it come down, correct a little bit. But everything else has been a wait for me as well. OMI, I do have a bunch of buy orders in right about the 0.1 cent mark. So let's see. Let's jump over to Wanchain.
Okay. Oh, I put Wanchain. There we go.
In this channel, we have a strategic relationship with Wanchain where I'm a really big fan, and we do give away Wanchain on Friday live streams. So we didn't have one last week. We will have one this Friday, and we'll be giving away twice as much Wanchain.
Okay. Now, to me, obviously that wouldn't influence what I see in the chart. So I would just tell you what I think of it. And what was I'm sure we talked about this major inverse head and shoulders pattern here. So we got this. See if I can switch it over to a weekly chart because I think that would show it a lot clearer. So we had downward trend. This is the left shoulder. This is the head. This is the right shoulder. It was very symmetrical. So we've got to move up here. Then the correction. Sometimes you get a correction back to the neckline, which is fine, which is what we got here. But then it came back again, and I think this is why it went a bit further below, because you wouldn't have expected it to come back twice to that. So clearly people bailed out. Now it's still trading close to this sort of support area, and it's looking pretty neutral to me. Not bearish, not bullish, just neutral. What I like about it is it did have this move up, and it's corrected, which could still be part of something larger that's building. What I would need to see, I'd need a tripwire for me to say, okay,
Now,
we can buy it.
chart is not showing past April for some reason.
Ah, right. Okay, that would make sense.
That's
So let's.
crazy that so many charts are doing that.
Yeah, it must be where they are. Where they're, I guess they must have to pay fees to be on certain exchanges, and maybe to save money they don't. I don't know, actually. That's a technical question in a different way. So actually that's so this current chart is sort of confirming what we're saying. So what we've got here, we had the inverse head and shoulders pattern. So if we reveal what happened before, this was the inverse head and shoulders pattern where it went up, came back down, went up, came back again, which was a disappointment. We would have needed that trend line. So you see now why we look for the safety of a trigger level, because for our point of view, it helps to not buy something prematurely when we don't know what the fundamentals are. So for the moment, I would definitely have to wait, because it's coming deeper into this reversal pattern. And the next major support, there will be a bit of support where it is now, because at the low ends of the head where there was some buying, the shoulders, so these shoulder parts, there is buying there. So there was buying there before. So we're in those zones, or very close to. So so there could be a little bit of buying here. You can see that the decline has slowed. So we had sharp downward, then not so sharp, and that's gone flat. So it'd be nice to see a green candle for lots of reasons, but one, just to confirm that there's some buying near these support levels. But there is also a risk that it could get all the way back down to this previous low before it turns around. So I'd still have to wait, and I'd use that trend line that I drew on the previous chart as a trigger line to say if it can take that out, then I'd be more interested in looking to turn it from a kind of a wait into a buy.
Perfect. So for now, it's just, a wait.
Yeah.
I did buy a little bit more Wanchain, and I've dollar cost averaged into this while it's down. It was just a little bit. I mean, it was like maybe $200 worth. Azero is the next one. This was one that somebody, I think they probably got spell corrected. We were trying to find Alpha Zero. It's Aleph Zero, but A0 is the ticker symbol.
Ah, right. So that was the one we were looking at.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah. Okay, that we couldn't find last week. Right. Is this up to date? No, it's not. Right. So Azero.
It actually looks like it goes through mid-July. Is it not?
Sorry, did I jump too early? Azero. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, yeah, because I got it on a weekly chart. Yeah, good spot. So so what have we got here? Clear downward trend. What is this? Big question mark. Is this a base or is it a continuation pattern? So what we would have to do here is, so we didn't miss anything from last week, thankfully. So I was thinking for a moment, if there was an amazing pattern and something had broken out, I'd be really disappointed that we didn't catch it. But it still looks like we've got a chance because not a lot has happened. So if this trend is to continue down, this triangular constriction will come into play. So this low pattern, which is actually sitting on right now, this low support line will break and then it will ease lower. And we've seen some charts this week where you can see that happening. Now, the argument for when this turns into a base is if it goes on too long. So in other words, there is a time frame for it to break down. And if it doesn't, as we were saying again about Bitcoin last week, if it didn't break down immediately, the risk sort of immediately turned to the upside because there are certain time sort of considerations as to when the people who are short it or people who want to buy it when they step in. So it almost passes its sell by date, if you like, and then goes up. If you use the sell as in sell the market. So what we need to see here is if this is a base, it will have to break this resistance line, step one, break this resistance point at 75 cents, that's step two. Now, where a big base comes at 0.83, which is step three. Now, they're all relatively close in terms of price, very big in terms of percentage moves, but certainly not far away from actual price moves. So I can't say buy it yet because it hasn't formed a base. It's not confirmed yet, but it wouldn't take much to actually break this resistance line and to change the pattern completely. So we're going to know in a couple of weeks. I think we're going to have to come back to this in a couple of weeks' time to see whether it's broken this low point or whether it's managed to take out a high and formed a longer term base. But this looks like it's trying to end this downward trend. Everything's slowed. It's had a sharp move, which was rejected fast. So it's still very, very balanced. So I can't give a straight call here until we see a bit more evidence. But as you can see, when the markets are this way, I will always err on the side of caution because, there will be times when it's much clearer and we can wait for those kind of better opportunities.
Yeah, I still have a bunch of cash on the sides that I'm waiting for a more clear signal, either to the downside or to the upside. I am riskier than you when it goes way down, and I'm happy with those levels. I put money in, whereas you wait for breakouts, although you have the option of waiting for breakouts in many of the different markets that you're in, which that strategy works well when you're looking at 15 different markets, right? So,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you can just sit around, you don't care what crypto's doing because you can look at other things because there's all these different markets that you can look at. And so I like trying to get the bottom, which is always a risky sentiment. But when you're buying the actual tokens and you do some research on it, like you don't always catch the bottom, but it helps me feel out whether I think that they'll survive for the longer term. And as long as they do, usually the upside when all that money comes in is tremendous. And so
What do they do? It's
this one, I've got the website pulled up. It looks like it's on Polkadot, if I understand right. So Aleph Zero is a proof of stake public blockchain. So maybe their own blockchain. We combine original ABFT. So ABFT consensus protocol with a customized substrate stack. Currently, we're working on enhancing the platform with privacy framework based on zero knowledge proofs and secure multi-party computation to empower developers with a unique approach to private smart contracts. Interesting. So the website is good, and I would have to dig into this one more. I don't know about this one. So for me, this is a wait. I'm not seeing anything in the charts that has me excited to buy right now. I don't know enough about it fundamentally to say, you know what, this is a good enough level. I'm going to put a little bit in. So for now, I'm going to watch their token, like everything, went up. Oh no, this wasn't even out till January of this year. And so they had their big run up after they launched and they got some momentum. And so I don't know what their vesting schedule is, but often during this time, if they have private sale tokens that are vesting, there will be continued to be downward price pressure. And the only way buying pressure then exceeds that downward price pressure is if a lot of money comes into the market. And at that point, everything's pumping. And so for me, this might cool off even. We'll see whether it breaks to the up or downside. My guess is it breaks to the downside, but I haven't looked at their vesting schedule to know for sure. Let's see. Let's take a look at, we have one more. I'm really happy our viewers suggested this. This is Coti, or currency of the internet. And they are actually building an over collateralized stablecoin on Cardano, which I would really love to see that be successful. I think we want and need stablecoins that aren't run by governments.
Yeah, definitely. Again, this is a very similar chart to the one that we looked at before, in the sense that we are coming back to major support. So here's the resistance. And just to be clear about this, resistance can reverse its role and become support. So an area where the market has struggled to break through on the first go and then breaks through, we see how it comes back here and touches that point, and then goes up again, that's great. So we're looking for that as an opportunity. Now, here we would have liked to have seen the market extend, of course, into new highs, but this is a technical thing. If it doesn't, then that failure is also a sign that we need to bail out, because the trend is not continuing. So it's been in a downward trend from here, and it's come all the way back, and it's gone through a little bit into this support area. So it's it needs to turn around very soon. Otherwise, I think it's going to drop to this next sort of level around 3 cents, 3 or 4 cents. This is a crucial area for it. Big support around here. And, I think given that there's a lot of other markets that are trying to find support in similar areas, that kind of backs up the fact that this could be even more interesting, because we've got a synchronization of a few markets together. So on a first hit, if it was a very short-term trade, I wouldn't mind just sort of buying, because this is a good zone. But because I don't know when we're going to talk about it again, when it's going to be suggested, I've got to think much longer term, because I don't want to say buy it here and then sort of 3 months later somebody asks to see it and it's all the way down here, and it's like, well, why did you buy it? So from a short-term trade, yeah, but from a long-term trade, I need to see some movement back up, and for this to be confirmed as support, it would take sort of move through 10 cents and then over 14 cents, those two moves there would be enough for me to be thinking that there's a nice buffer between the price and some major support. And then I'd feel more comfortable about the risk reward ratio. But as I say, as a short-term opportunity, yeah, it looks good. And I can see why you've asked to see it. So, thank you for that.
Yeah, it is right at a strong support level, right? So the likelihood that it goes up from here is much higher than normal. For me, this is just a wait. I've owned Coti in the past. I've made fantastic money off of this. I bought this way to the left on this chart. And when it went out of the narrative somewhere around November and December of 2019, and then when it went crazy, actually in, what was that, July 2020, I took, I think, a bunch of the profits out. And then when it went down and then it was going up again, I sold the rest. So I haven't ever rebought back in it, but I love the company. I tend to be in the smaller cap altcoins when I'm ready to take on a lot of risk. And so it's getting to a point that it's cheap enough that I'm very interested again. So I might pick up some more of this. I just want a clear signal that either it goes lower or I think it's had its bottom going in. Now I'll just hold it actually for a shorter swing trade. I love what they're doing, and I hope JED, their decentralized stablecoin, is successful. Would love that. I know for those that are here and joining us, the market is generally slow. Most everything is down. Just know that smart choices made during these down times, or this, what we call the bear market or the crypto winter, lead to amazing gains when the markets turn around. This is the best time to be here. Now, it's really exciting to be here after the markets have gone up for 3 or 4 or 5 months, but that time isn't near as exciting as if you are here during this slow time and you took some good positions, or when the market does turn around, you take some good positions. And then you're there having already placed your positions and the market's gone up for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months, and you've had quite a rocket ship ride. So you're in the right place. Those that have stayed tuned and been paying attention, I'm sure your rewards are going to be large if you make some smart decisions during that time. Now, that's always said, right? It's about making smart decisions, but that's why we try to lay out as much information as we can, and hope that you also get additional information other places so that you can form your conclusions on what companies will be solid, that their technology will really benefit as money comes back in this market, and then take that ride as the money comes back into this market. Thanks, Paul, for joining us, and thank you and the audience for joining us. It's been fun. Paul, love these videos with you. We'll see you next week.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you. All the very best.
Into the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit, right before you could, was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss, cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out, cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, the leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, got parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to studying to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong, cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go with the hate, let the haters be crafting. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time to be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Amazing time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough. And that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.